Somewhere in your ear, not deep inside, just along the outer cartilage curve near the canal, there's a nerve ending almost no one discusses, and it connects, more or less directly, to your brainstem. Not your eardrum, not your inner ear, the skin of your outer ear. That small fold, that dip, that spot you absently rub when stressed without knowing why it calms you. That's the vagus nerve, or at least one of its branches, the only external body surface where it emerges. And people have known this for a long time. Acupuncturists have needled that spot for centuries. Some practitioners swear by it, for anxiety, for digestion, for sleep. But there's a reason it got buried, maybe dismissed, and it has less to do with the science and more to do with the packaging. Because once you wrap ancient practice in words like vibrational healing and energetic recalibration, the researchers stop listening. So let me strip that away and just look at what's actually happening. The vagus nerve is strange. It's the 10th cranial nerve, which sounds like trivia, but matters, because most cranial nerves stay in your head. The vagus leaves your skull, drops into your neck, winds through your chest, hits your heart, your lungs, your gut. It's long. It's unusual. It does not behave like most nerves. And about 80% of the signals traveling through it go upward, from the body to the brain, not the other way around. Which means, and this is the part that took time to absorb, when your gut fires a signal up the vagus, your brain registers it. The body isn't just executing the brain's instructions. There's a constant negotiation happening, and the vagus nerve is the main communication line. So, if you could stimulate the vagus from the outside, not surgically, there are implants that do this, used for epilepsy and depression for decades, but just through the skin, through that one external branch on the ear. That's what researchers began asking around the early 2000s. And what they found is complicated, but interesting. Transcutaneous auricular vagal nerve stimulation, they call it TVANS, involves placing a small electrode on that spot in the ear and running a very mild current. Clinical trials have tested it for atrial fibrillation, for depression, for chronic pain. Some results were modest, some were surprising. None of it is settled science, but the mechanism keeps pulling attention. Even setting aside the treatment claims, the pathway itself is real. You touch that part of your ear in a specific way, and you are in some measurable sense reaching into your nervous system. Now, the grounding part enters here, and I want to be careful because this is where the conversation usually derails. Earthing, the practice of placing bare skin directly on the earth, usually feet on grass, soil, or sand, has been studied, actually studied. Peer-reviewed papers exist. Most of them are small. Most of them have methodological issues. But a few things keep appearing across different studies that are hard to dismiss. One of them is cortisol, specifically the timing of cortisol. Cortisol isn't bad. It gets framed that way. Stress hormone, villain of modern wellness, but that's not accurate. Cortisol follows a rhythm. It should peak in the morning, around 30 to 45 minutes after waking. That spike is what creates alertness. It gets you moving. And then it should fall across the day, bottoming out at night so melatonin can take over. When that rhythm breaks, and it breaks in a lot of people, from chronic stress, from artificial light, from irregular sleep, your body loses its orientation in time. You're exhausted during the day and alert at night. Your melatonin arrives late. Your sleep turns shallow. One of the recurring findings in earthing research is a normalization effect on cortisol timing, not a reduction necessarily, a normalization. The rhythm corrects toward what it should look like. The morning peak sharpens, the nighttime floor drops lower. Why would skin contact with earth do that? The theory, and it is still a theory to be clear, is electrical.
The Earth's surface carries a negative charge, free electrons. When you're insulated from the ground, which is most of us are most of the time because of rubber-soled shoes and synthetic flooring and elevated beds, you accumulate a slight positive charge. And the argument is this imbalance contributes to oxidative stress at the cellular level. That sounds abstract, but oxidative stress is real, and it does contribute to inflammation, and inflammation connects to cortisol dysregulation, and cortisol dysregulation connects to sleep disruption. The chain of causality exists. Whether earthing actually moves electrons in a way that changes any of this, that part is not proven. But the combination keeps surfacing. Because when you look at what happens when someone does both, spends time grounding outside and also stimulates the auricular branch of the vagus through gentle ear massage or pressure, you're not just stacking two wellness practices, you're potentially hitting two different points of the same system. The vagus nerve influences the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the system that controls cortisol output. Vagal tone, which is basically a measure of how well your vagus nerve functions, is inversely associated with inflammatory markers. Higher vagal tone, lower chronic inflammation. Lower chronic inflammation, better cortisol regulation. Better cortisol regulation, better sleep. And the question of what improves vagal tone is fascinating because it's not just about stimulating the nerve directly, it's about the whole loop. Slow breathing raises vagal tone, cold exposure raises it, exercise raises it. And some early research suggests that earthing might contribute too through the inflammatory pathway. So you've got this feedback system, nervous system, endocrine system, inflammatory response. And instead of intervening in one place, you're nudging multiple access points simultaneously. Is that proven? No. Is it plausible? The biology supports it more than most people realize. I spoke to someone, not naming them, they were speaking informally, who runs N of 1 trials, just on themselves. Wearable data, HRV tracking, sleep staging from a Ring device. They spend 3 weeks deliberately grounding every evening, barefoot for 40 minutes outside, and pairing it with about 10 minutes of ear massage focused on that vagal branch, the auricular concha specifically, that curved hollow section. The data wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. Sleep onset dropped, meaning they fell asleep faster. Deep sleep stages increased slightly, and their morning HRV, which had been erratic, became more stable across the 3 weeks. One person, uncontrolled, confounded by everything, I know. But there's something about N of 1 data that clinical trial research consistently undervalues, which is that it's yours. It happened in your body, and if you can measure it carefully enough, it's real information. The problem with sleep research in general is that we keep looking for single causes and single interventions. Take this pill, do this thing, sleep better. But sleep is downstream of almost everything. It's a readout of your entire physiological state. Your light exposure, your cortisol rhythm, your core body temperature curve, your vagal tone, your inflammatory status. Fix any one of those in isolation and you might get marginal improvement. But when multiple things start moving in the same direction simultaneously, that's usually when people notice something real. There's an older concept coming back into neuroscience circles, interoception, your body's ability to sense its own internal state. And the vagus nerve is central to this. It's how your brain knows what your gut is doing, what your heart is doing, how inflamed your tissues are. When vagal tone is low, interoceptive accuracy drops. You lose sensitivity to your own body. And one of the things that seems to restore it, gently, gradually, is exactly the kind of low-intensity, sensory, grounded practice we're discussing here. Not high stimulation, not another biohack with a gadget strapped to your head. Something slow, something physical, something that asks you to be present to your own surface. I'm not selling you on bare feet and grass. I'm genuinely uncertain about how robust the earthing evidence is, but I'm much less uncertain about vagal tone and what it does to sleep architecture and cortisol timing. That part is solid science, even if the specific application needs more study. And what strikes me is how intuitive this is, which should make you skeptical and curious at the same time, because sometimes things become folk wisdom because people actually noticed something real over centuries of observation, and then the mechanism got figured out later. And sometimes things become folk wisdom because people like patterns, and placebo effects are powerful. The ear thing is harder to dismiss than people think. That nerve branch is there. The studies on T-vans are there. The connection to sleep and the autonomic nervous system is not speculative. The grounding thing is murkier, but the cortisol data is interesting enough that I wouldn't ignore it. Put them together, and you're talking about something that costs nothing,